Now, I stopped there before I finished chapter 13 because I wanted to make sure that I had enough time to talk about the Bloofer lady. Now, we read in the newspaper, the Westminster Gazette, about these children that are being, maybe not kidnapped, but they are out overnight. And when they ask them where they have been, they say they have been with the Bloofer lady, and that she has asked them to go for a walk, and they have gone with her. And the next day when they are found, they have marks on their throat. Again, we know what's going on. They don't. But before that, before it talks about the Bloofer lady, it talks about the Kensington Horror, or the Stabbing Woman, or the Woman in Black. Now, I want you to think about the correlation of these figures of the woman or the women who are harmful for children, because there's going to be a discussion board question about that, and I'm not going into it. But I do want to call your attention to those reports of the Bloofer woman. And then as we progress on, we find out that Van Helsing thinks the Bloofer lady is none other than our recently deceased friend Lucy. And of course, some of the other are not going to be buying into it. And we're going to hear about this later in a later chapter. But in chapter 14, Helsing visits Mina and John, who are married by now. And he said, and this is where Van Helsing says to Seward, you think then that those small holes in the children's throat were made by the same that made the holes in Miss Lucy? And Seward says, I suppose so. And then Helsing says, then you were wrong. Oh, would it were so, but alas, no, it is worse, far, far worse. And Seward cries out, in God's name, Professor Van Helsing, what do you mean? And Van Helsing says, they were made by Miss Lucy. And that's kind of the highlight of chapter 14. And so we go on into 15, where they talk about the most recent child that was harmed in this way. And he says he wants to go play with the Bloofer lady. Now, Lucy is exerting her mind control over these children, just as Dracula exerted over Lucy before she was made into a vampire, and also the wolf, and also Renfield. So maybe vampires start out small and work up, but remember that association with children and the vampire. So Helsing wants to go to they go and look at Lucy, and Seward says, the lips were red, nay, redder than before, and on the cheeks was a delicate bloom. And at this point, Van Helsing says, I want to cut off her head and fill her mouth with garlic and drive a stake through her heart. And Seward is very much opposed to mutilating the body. And what reservations do we have against mutilating dead bodies? Why do we find that repulsive? So think about that as well. And then he talks some about how Arthur must think that, Van Helsing talks about how Arthur must think he is horrible because he wouldn't let him kiss Lucy, which of course we know why. Now, again, Lucy is gone from the coffin in chapter 16 when they come back. But then as they are there at the tomb, she comes back with the child. And it goes on until Seward writes again. She's in her coffin one more time. She seemed like a nightmare of Lucy as she lay there. The pointed teeth, the blood-stained, voluptuous mouth, which made one shudder to see, the whole carnal and unspirited appearance, seeming like a devilish mockery of Lucy's sweet purity. So I want, again, you to note what this is said about the voluptuousness and the carnalness, because I want to come back to that. So they drive a stake. They get Arthur there, and Seward is there, and Van Helsing is there. And Arthur actually is the one that drives the stake through Lucy's heart. And of course, when he does, then her spirit is released, and she is no longer under the spell of Dracula. And I want you to think about this as well, because there's going to be a discussion board question about that. And I'm going to stop right there and come back.